What is going on today, Generals? It is your captain, Nick, checking in from the BI Ed. Today, I'm going to delve into the Western Australia seismic market and point out why the seismic industry is fading and why petroleum companies that operate within this region have slowed down their exploration within this region. So, Western Australia's seismic industry stands at a crossroads. Historically driven by petroleum exploration, this sector has seen a significant slowdown as major players shift their focus to international markets and renewable energy gains prominence. However, there exists a transformative opportunity for seismic companies to repurpose their legacy data and expertise to support the energy transition. Some of the reasons for the decline in seismic activity in Western Australia can be contributed to several factors. The first one being strategic shifts by major companies. Companies such as Santos have redirected their efforts towards international markets such as PNG and Alaska, where untapped reserves and lower competition offer strategic advantages. This pivot has reduced emphasis on seismic exploration within Western Australia as resources are allocated to regions with potentially higher returns. So we've seen a downward shift there in the petroleum exploration in WA over time. Some of the fossil fuel challenges. Petroleum industry has faced fluctuating global oil prices and mounting pressure to align with sustainability goals. As the global demand for renewable energy rises, fossil fuel exploration, particularly in mature markets like Western Australia, has experienced a recalibration of priorities. Consequently, the appetite for conducting new seismic surveys has waned. Some of the opportunities in the transition to renewable energy for seismic-based companies include, reselling the seismic data to renewable energy exploration-based companies. So this could be companies that are involved within critical mineral exploration. You can repurpose the legacy data that was shot in the 80s to the 2010s and leverage technological advancements, demonstrating sort of some trends there on where to drill. Next, we've got exploring critical minerals. Western Australia's subsurface is abundant in minerals such as lithium, cobalt, and rare earth elements. Key components of renewable technologies. Modern seismic imaging can precisely map these deposits, shifting the focus from petroleum to minerals essential for the energy transition. So that's just what I said. We're working on using that data for renewables to identify where there could be some opportunities for those renewable energy exploration companies to drill, which can also de-risk the environmental aspect, so they're not sort of just drilling blind. They're getting a little bit in subsurface information as to where the commodity could be located on that site, which is advantageous from an environmental standpoint. So ways in which you can utilize this legacy data, decades of high quality seismic data collected through during the 80s to 90s for the petroleum exploration hold untapped potential. By reinterpreting these data sets, exploration and mining companies can identify critical mineral deposits, unlocking value from legacy data. Methods to achieve this include reprocessing data sets with cutting edge machine learning or AI enhanced interpretation, creating digital platforms or cloud-based repositories for region-specific applications, providing consulting services tailored to renewables, such as advising on geothermal feasibility using legacy seismic data. And this all links back into technological innovation. So advancements in seismic imaging and data processing techniques such as AI and machine learning enable companies to uncover overlooked resources and maximize the value of existing data. These innovations are critical for adapting to the evolving demands of the energy market. On the screen right now is a dashboard visualizing 3D seismic across WA's petroleum basins from 1983 all the way to 2025. This data gives us a real powerful snapshot of where exploration efforts have been focused. First up, check out the Northern Carnarvon Basin. So up the top here, we have 143K or 143,000 square kilometers of seismic shot data since inception, or seismic 3D data that's been shot since 1983. Um, this absolutely dwarfs the next line, the Browse Basin, with 39K. The Bonaparte, Perth, and Canning basins are all sort of trailing behind there. Okay. Now, this is predominantly because we have here, um, up here, land, marine, transition. Okay. So this is basically onshore up here for land. Marine is offshore here. So you can see that the offshore 3D seismic market in WA for petroleum is much larger than what it is on land here in this particular time. Okay. So I'm just going to have a look at land here today. Um, this is more shot by boats, whereas this is shot by vibes and nodes as such on land, which is probably a little bit more applicable to most people. So coming down here on my table, I can sort of see, okay, well, Perth Basin has been the biggest historically here, followed by the Canning and the Northern Carnarvon. There has been some stuff shot there, but it's predominantly Perth and the Canning Basin here. So if I want to look at this now, I go, okay, so the operators here were Strike Energy, that is Strike West, Energy Resources, Beach Energy, Brew Energy, and sort of just having a bit of a look down here as to who was sort of there in what particular era. I've got my year seismic shot here, so I can see these are the most recent seismic surveys conducted here. I can have a look at the lease titles here of where seismic has been shot. All right. And I can kind of work out, okay, well, contractor wise or seismic company wise, who's got a relationship with what particular operator. So we know that Terex Seismic here has dominated um, sort of 2013 here through to 2025 on the region, whatever sort of seismic work's been within this region as far as 3D goes. Um, and then coming down here, we had Western Geco coming here in more the 90s here, early 2000s. Okay. So if I want to take it a little bit further, I can have a look at, out of all the active leases at the moment, okay, it's not giving us anything. Out of all the leases that are pending renewal, okay, so out of all the leases that are pending renewal, this is the seismic that's been shot on them in terms of 3D seismic in Western Australia. Okay, so if I just want to look at the Perth Basin, and go, okay, so these EP 469, EP 432, and L11 here, a year seismic shot 2014 for Warrego Energy by Terex. There's some data there. Okay, and what this does is this just gives me an idea as to who's moving in the market, what's happening as far as who's working with who, what's the current status of the lease, what's been shot on what particular site, what project was it, and I can then go and have a look at expired too. So I can look at cancelled, or let's say cancel-based leases. Okay, there's nothing there that's cancelled or expired, but I can sort of have a bit of a look there if I want to go renewed next. Okay, nothing. Okay, pending renewal. So I can see here that pending renewal, Brew Energy, EP436, and EP391 here. There was some seismic shot here in 2015. Okay, and that just sort of gives me a bit of an idea. So if I want to look down here next, I can go through some of these, so I can look at Curtin University, what they've sort of done. I can go through different contractors here within the seismic market and sort of see what's happened. So if I want to see Terex, which sort of dominate or monopolize this particular market for onshore-based seismic, I can see all the 3D projects they've done here between 2014 and 2025. Okay, so I can sort of see, okay, this is how they've performed here. This is sort of what's sort of being conducted. You can really see that Santos Limited aren't doing a lot of seismic onshore over the last sort of 10, 11 years here because they're not here. But the interesting thing is, if you want to look at companies like Santos and Chevron and those other companies, as far as 3D go, I don't know if it'll come up here, but you've got more of a chance of working it out by going offshore You see here that you've got big companies like Shell, Chevron, BHP were there for a little bit in petroleum. I don't think they're there anymore. ConocoPhillips, Santos acquired some of their assets, I believe. It was a bit of a takeover. But I can have a look here and I can see a lot of the international based companies are all offshore for petroleum within WA based industry, which is quite interesting there. So it sort of tells a little bit of a story here. You can kind of have a bit of a look at, who's works with who. Set this up here. So this is the latest seismic that's been shot offshore all the way through to the oldest down here. Okay, so you can sort of have a little bit of tell us a little bit of a story historically as to who's worked with who. Okay, so that's that. That's how that works. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to move across the page. So this here is the story of the 3D seismic market in Western Australia. So what we can see on the screen here is we can see where we've performed pretty well, where the market's performed pretty well, and in other parts where there's been a little bit of a downturn. So if I look here in 2008, before the GFC, there was a big demand here for 3D seismic. Um, and it's if I'll go down here and I look at land, a lot of that's offshore. We can see that, onshore there's never really been a huge demand here for 3D seismic in the Western Australia petroleum market. Like there was a big project here in 2005. I can have a look at that. So Arc Energy, that was a big one. Outside of that, though, there really hasn't been um, very big projects at all there. Like I'm sure that made a bit of money here. In 2012, doing 535 square kilometers. But if we're looking at it from the perspective of whole market, if I go to marine, you know, that's a much bigger um, number there than what land is here. Okay, so we really know that the offshore market is sort of where it's been as far as 3D seismic has gone. Um, and you can see there that you know there's not really a lot of work there in 2025, even 23, 22. You didn't even see anything in 24. So it sort of shows that tells the story that seismic in WA in the petroleum sector isn't performing as well as it probably could. And a lot of that is to do with what I said at the introduction of this video with companies using older seismic data to draw those interpretations. Okay, so um, it probably calls for a bit of a pivot within this industry. Uh, yeah, so next we've got a tree map here, Western Australia 3D seismic industry. So if I'm here, right, you can see all the different basins. So I can see this is all the 3D seismic that's been shot. Once again, this is land. I've got this on. I filtered this down to land. So we'll look at land first. Here I've got the survey name, the year, and then the report and survey data types if mentioned. So see, we'll go Perth first, okay, because it's the biggest. So if I'm looking at this, I go, okay, well, I want to know who shot the most 3D seismic in the Perth Basin onshore. Okay, that's my question. So somebody says, Nick, what is that? You go, right, okay, here's the operators. So we know Arc Energy, Energy Resources, Origin Energy, Beach Energy, and Boral Energy there. So I'd be looking at Arc Energy, okay? And from here, I kind of go, oh, all right, well, what years were they shot? Were these guys still, big in the market here, or was it to 20 years ago, 40 years ago? How long ago was it? So you would go year seismic shot on your tree map, and you go 2005. That's when they got a lot of 3D seismic. Okay, and you go right, all right. So what leases was that on? What titles was that on? And is there an opportunity here to maybe use this in renewables? So you would go, yep, okay, have a look. Okay, these were the leases that it was shot on. And from there, I go, okay, well, what contractor shot that? Who would have that data that I could potentially buy it off if I want to get that data for my renewable energy exploration company? So it doesn't say there, but you could always go back to the operator and work it out. Some of them you'll have it for, others you won't, but that's just a little bit of an example. there on what you can do. Other things is, if I want to just go in and go straight in, lease title, energy resources, okay, EP 368, they shot on. And what year was that? They shot on that? 2023. Okay. And it was a 392 square kilometer job. Okay, cool. So the tree map just shows the overall story here, and it maps the market. And it's a great way of pinpointing who shot on what particular site, who shot in what basin, etc., which allows you, if you work in the petroleum or broader resources or mining industry, to use that to your advantage. Okay, next we've got the story of the 2D seismic market in Western Australia. Okay, so for this one here, this is a lot bigger because 2D is a lot higher demand than sort of 3D. It's been going for a lot longer too. I've actually filtered this out. There was some 2D that dates back all the way to the 1950s. So that's a pretty long time. Last 50 years is still a sufficient time there to really draw some interpretations here. All right, so that's both onshore and offshore again. We're going to go just onshore here, just land, okay? It's the same thing. Land 168 A is the total. Marine here is 2.68 million, okay? So you can really see that offshore is much larger in terms of scale than what we see onshore. And maybe that's to do with environmental regulations. Could be stronger onshore than offshore. I don't know. But maybe there's just a greater demand for greater opportunity for sort of seismic in the offshore market. Okay, so looking over here next, I'm going to go have a look. All right, so land. All right, got this all filtered by year seismic shot here, so I can go through it. Okay, and I know that energy resources, they've done a couple of jobs here with Terex. Belsize got a deal off Terex here on EP 494, McCallum Group Limited. So, that could be they undercut them on cost there. I don't know. SA Exploration, they've done some work for Geoscience Australia here in 2018 and other seismic companies. So you can sort of just go through here, have a bit of a look at the leases and see what sort of the scale is. These are the different surveys here. So this is quite good information for subsurface-based teams in petroleum industry, mining exploration-based companies. So even seismic companies, just kind of having a look at that historical element. There's some missing data here, but we can sort of work through and see, okay, who's done this? Okay, so Belsize, they've had about two. It's like more of a coal-based company. I know these guys work with more coal-based companies, and yep, okay, and you can sort of see that the players start to change here as we move back into the 90s, all right? But we can really identify here what's going on. So if I look at the line graph here, you can see that 94 was a massive year and 82 is huge. What was going on in 82? So I can click on this. Okay, I've got 1982. I've got all the seismic that was shot here in 1982, the operator, the contractor, and the total 2D line length in kilometers here. So go right, that big project here, that was done by Eagle Corporation Limited. Eddie Ray shot it on EP 142 and EP 114, and it was called Waterbank 1982 SS. All right, so if I'm working in that region, I know that there's a lot of data there that I can potentially use within this industry to sort of pinpoint where to try and extract some commodities from. Another one down here, SO Australia Proprietary Limited, GSI, EP 189, EP 188. All right, so that's just kind of an example there. Over here in 94, do the same thing. Okay, once again, I can have a look at this, look at all these leases here that have had, seismic data shot on it. Okay, so that really gives us a bit of an idea as to sort of movements there of the market. Now, recent years here, there's just not a lot. It's fluctuating, it's up and down, which makes the industry a little bit volatile. Like really from 2014 was big. Then after 2014, 2015, nothing. 2017, nothing. 2018, a little bit, but nothing. 2019, nothing. 2021, 2020, obviously there was nothing because of COVID. 2021, there was a bit, so it sort of came back a little bit. 22, we started to decline, and 23, nothing. Okay, so um, it's a real cash flow based sort of business here. I guess the seismic industry, have to monitor the cash flow because it's real up and down. But I would say that a lot of businesses are using the data that they've acquired through these periods here from the 80s and the 90s. And then they're not really, using, they're not spending the extra capital to acquire new data here. And they're just using this old data and using machine learning and AI to draw interpretations from that. So that's quite interesting there. All right, so next market scoping 2D seismic shot in WA, petroleum industry, 1970 to 2025. Okay, so we can sort of see here that Northern Carnarvon shot the most. This is just as a whole here, but I think that's marine. Yep, that's marine based. Bonaparte, Browse, South Carnarvon, I think Perth. Okay, so Northern Carnarvon is the big one there for offshore. For onshore, it's Canning Basin and the Perth Basin, so it's consistent with 3D, I'm pretty sure. So that'd be the two basins that you'd be looking at. Once again, I've got it's filtered by the year shot here, so I can look down and go, okay, Terex and Energy Resources, bit with Strike Energy, and so forth. Okay, I can just go through that again and have a bit of a look, and that's just a different way of doing it. I can go down here to the seismic companies and have a look at who shot what in what particular year, which is useful. Okay, this is my last visual or dashboard here. Another tree map for Western Australia 2D seismic industry. So over here, what we've got is this is both onshore and offshore again. So I need to go down here, go to land. Okay, so Canning is the big one, as we already pointed out. So what lease titles were there? Okay, so these are the biggest lease titles with the most seismic data in the Canning Basin in WA in the form of 2D seismic. Okay, so I can go down here. I can go, right, who are the operators that are shot on this one? Okay, and what years were those operators there? Bang, I can see all the years here that Western Australian Petroleum Proprietary Limited shot on this particular lease. I can have a look here at these guys. What year did they have a go? 67, even earlier. And Geoscience Australia in the 50s, they were having a look. All right, so that straight away, that sort of tells me what's going on. EP316, once again, I go operator. Okay, Mocco, the year was 86, and they shot a lot on that in 1986. All right, and that just tells me the full sort of story there. Okay, and if I want to click on the lease, it gives me a bit of information down here too. Okay, that's the name of the survey, that's the year shot. And then if I come down here, I can go, right, well, what was this sort of gives me a bit more of a report summary and survey data types. So in the form of qualitative data, gives me a bit more information. So I'm going to talk about the trends, impacts, and renewable energy potential next, and just wrap this video up today. So the slowing pace of seismic activity in Western Australia's onshore and offshore petroleum industries stem from several intertwined factors. Okay, so first factor is paramount among these is the shift in focus by major players such as Santos, who have been increasingly directed their efforts towards untapped international markets, including PNG and Alaska. These regions offer promising reserves, in some cases reduced competition compared to the Australian market. This strategic pivot has resulted in diminished emphasis on Western Australia's seismic exploration as resources are redirected to projects with potentially higher returns or strategic advantages abroad. Additionally, the petroleum industry has been facing broader challenges, including fluctuating global oil prices, increasing pressure to align with sustainability goals, as the demand for renewable energy rises, conventional fossil fuel exploration, particularly in established markets such as Western Australia, has seen a recalibration of priorities. This has led to decreased appetite for conducting new seismic surveys in the region. Okay, so from the human intervention and land use there. It all links back up to the impacts of mining activities, changes in land use, um, all that sort of thing. Some of the technological advancements that I mentioned using the older seismic data is all related to this. Next, we're going to talk about the future of seismic activity in Western Australia. So, despite the slowdown, the seismic industry in Western Australia holds considerable potential, are built in evolving forms. The transition to renewable energy has brought new opportunities to the forefront, particularly in critical minerals exploration. Western Australia's subsurface is rich in minerals essential for renewable technologies such as lithium, cobalt, and rare earth elements. Seismic technology, once predominantly associated with petroleum exploration, can be repurposed to map these mineral deposits with greater precision. Okay, so to utilize some of the older seismic data for renewable energy, um, exploration and mining companies have a unique opportunity to unlock the value of seismic data from the 1980s and 1990s. These data sets, though initially collected for petroleum exploration, can be reinterpreted by identifying critical mineral deposits. Several methods can be employed, reprocessing historical based data. So modern seismic imaging technologies can significantly enhance the resolution and interpretability of older seismic data by reprocessing the data set with contemporary software. Exploration companies can uncover subsurface anomalies indicative of mineral deposits critical for renewable energy technologies, mapping unexplored layers. So historical seismic surveys um, often focus on layers relevant to petroleum extraction, leaving other geological formations relatively unexamined. Exploration companies can revisit these data sets to investigate deeper or shallower layers that may harbour valuable minerals. Cost efficiency of historical data. Acquiring new seismic data is often cost prohibitive, particularly for small exploration firms. Leveraging older data sets allows companies to minimize upfront expenses while still gaining valuable insights into subsurface structures. Collaborative opportunities. Mining companies can collaborate with data custodians from the petroleum industry to access and reinterpret legacy data sets, such as partnerships, can pave the way for innovative exploration strategies, fostering cross-industry insights and facilitating the renewable energy transition. Okay, so in conclusion here, while seismic activity in Western Australia's petroleum sector has slowed, the technology's adaptability ensures its relevance in the region's evolving energy landscape. By repurposing historical seismic data and investing in modern reinterpretation techniques, exploration companies can uncover new opportunities in critical minerals essential for renewable energy technologies. As the global focus shifts towards sustainability, seismic exploration in Western Australia is poised to play a pivotal role in the renewable energy transition. Thank you for listening to my YouTube video today, ladies and gentlemen. And if you liked the video, be sure to hit the subscribe button. And I'll look forward to seeing you again in the next analysis. Cheers.